From Kansas State University, this is Agriculture Today. Eric Atkinson with you. And ahead today, K-State's Kraig Roozeboom will talk about intensive use of cover crops in a wheat-sorghum-soybean crop rotation, citing the latest data from multi-year cover crop field research Kraig has conducted. He reported on this work at that recent Midwest Cover Crops Conference. Then, on the latest installment of FSA Coffee Talk, Emily Evans will go over USDA program deadlines for you producers to remember, for most of which is that fast approaching deadline for enrolling your 2019 and 20 crops in either the ARC or PLC program options. And later, K-State's Charlie Lee will talk about successfully attracting purple martins to one's place. All that and more coming up on Agriculture Today. Agricultural producers, landowners, and creditors, you have a partner in your legal and financial needs. Kansas Agricultural Mediation Services offers reliable, trusted information and guidance. Whether you need advice for ag credit concerns or are transitioning your operation to the next owner, Kansas Agricultural Mediation Services can assist you in making sound decisions for your business. To learn more, call 800-321-3276 or visit us online. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and next up for you, more information that was shared at that recent Midwest Cover Crops Conference that K-State co-sponsored near Kansas City. And this by K-Staters themselves as they passed along the information gleaned from the latest phase of a long-term cropping systems study looking at how the cash crops within those systems respond to cover crop inclusion in those rotations. Kraig Roozeboom is back by our way, cropping systems agronomist with K-State Research and Extension. What we're getting into today, Kraig, is the next round, if you will, of information that has been taken from this multi-year study conducted near Manhattan, correct?
That's right. We started this in 2007 with a given set of treatments, and we've gone through this 3-year cycle. It's a 3-year rotation of wheat, grain, sorghum, and soybeans, and we've gone through 3 cycles of that. We have every crop present every year, so even though it's only 3 cycles, we have multiple years of yield data and crop response information. And so after 3 cycles, we thought, well, for one thing, we'd characterized the response to those treatments fairly well over that time period. As we looked at those responses, maybe not getting the kind of soil health and some of those system-wide responses that we were hoping for or might expect, realized that a lot of these treatments were only affecting or in place for 4 to 5 months out of a 36-month rotation, or some years even less than that for some of those treatments. And so we felt it was time to intensify the system a little bit more, and so we modified some of the treatments to make them more intense, still in the context of this wheat-sorghum-soybean rotation. And so we still have the check where you have just those 3 crops, and it's just chemical fallow between. And the biggest window is between wheat harvest and sorghum planting. Mm-hmm. Wheat harvested in the end of June one year, sorghum may not go until early June the next year. So fairly long fallow period. Another check would be a system where we put double crop soybeans in after that wheat harvest. And that's a fairly common cropping system in much of the state and the region even. And incidentally, that's been probably the most profitable system in this study over the years because you've got that additional return most years. And over the years, we've had double crop soybean yields, and this is going all the way from 2007 up through this past year of 2019, ranging from, I think we had next to nothing a year or two, to 2016 we had 50-plus bushel soybean yield. And this past year it was, I think, up around 40-plus bushels per acre. And so on average, we're getting, over that 13 years, 27 bushels per acre of additional soybean yield out of the system by putting double crop soybeans in there. That brings in a significant amount of additional revenue.
But you said you wanted to intensify these systems going beyond the double crop beans after wheat.
Right, and beyond what our other cover crop treatments were. So Previously, we had cover crops just in that window after wheat harvest, and we continued a treatment that had and now it's a cover crop mix, whereas previously we just had single species of a summer legume, winter legume, summer non-legume, winter non-legume. Well, we put it in a cover crop mix after wheat harvest, had summer species in it, give us good cover and establishment over those summer months. Then it also included some brassicas and clover and even some small grains then that would overwinter, or at least have the potential to overwinter and give us several months of actively growing plants out there. So that's one way we intensified it. Another way we intensified it was, the double crop soybeans give us additional return. We like that. But can we then add cover crops to that rotation and other parts of that rotation? And so after double crop soybeans, we would go in with a spring planted small grain brassica mix ahead of sorghum. We also had a system where not after sorghum we added another spring planted cover crop before the next soybean crop. So now we're starting to get cover crops in multiple places in that rotation.
Basically having cover on that ground, maybe not year round, but pretty darn close to it.
Getting close to some of the most intense treatments will have cover on there almost 30 plus months out of the 36 now. Right.
So, Kraig, what were you evaluating then in as far as this system? The performance of those following crops, obviously, but one of the other questions that inherently comes up when talking about cover crop utilization in general, in this case an intensified system, is the ultimate impact on moisture availability, soil water content. You did gauge that, didn't you?
That's right. So we looked at that in the previous 3 cycles, and yes, there was some effect on the subsequent sorghum crop, primarily of the previous cover crop treatment, double crop, what have you. But on average, if we put enough nitrogen on there, we could get similar yields to what we were getting in chemical fallow. We did some soil profile testing. We documented recharge of that soil profile by the time we got back around the sorghum planting. And so at this location, right, we can't extract this all the way to western Kansas by any stretch, but given our rainfall here, 33, 34 inches a year, we saw minimal impact, at least on the sorghum crop, in terms of soil water extraction by the cover crops. Great. We're intensifying the system now with these new treatments. What we have assembled so far is, how did the sorghum respond, right? We have now a cover crop that's not only growing all summer long, but has components that are growing on in up until sorghum planting. And we have double crop soybeans, but then we insert another spring cover ahead of sorghum planting. And how did that perform? Well, we did that for 3 years, 17, 18, and 19. In 2017 and 2019, pretty similar response to what we had seen in previous years. Yeah, we may have used some soil water, but we have those spring rains that recharged. Pretty much no negative impact on having those spring covers in place. 2018, a very different story. If you think back to 2018, we had, I think, the last significant rainfall before sorghum planting was in October of 2017 or something like that.
It's pretty spare. Right?
It was a very dry winter, very dry in through the spring, continued, I think, even through June. But we went ahead and planted the spring covers because we typically get those nice spring rains. Well, we didn't get them. And there's a big difference between where we had those spring covers and where we did not. That sorghum came up much more slowly. We actually quantified it with a Canopeo percent canopy cover app. The treatments that had those spring covers lagged the entire season. They never did catch up. We took NDVI ratings that looks at canopy growth and greenness. Heading date was delayed by something like 11 days where we had those spring covers, so it really slowed that growth down when we had a substantial, like a 30 or 40% yield loss or yield reduction in those treatments that had a spring cover ahead of that sorghum.
So a little too intense.
It was just too intense that year. And so that's where I think that really emphasizes the importance of basically just responding to what you have out there in the field, right? If it's been a dry winter, maybe it's not a good idea to plant that spring cover or terminate it early or something like that. If you look at soybeans, I think I mentioned another treatment, not only added that cover ahead of the sorghum, but we added it ahead of the soybeans. Kind of a similar situation where we put that in ahead of the soybeans. The soybeans grew slower, yielded significantly less.
When you step back and look at it, though, and there's such a mountain of data associated with this study, and as far as cover crop usage in general, particularly coming after wheat, those crops serve a very viable role. And if it's somewhat modestly intense how you go about this, this can be a successful proposition for producers. It would appear by the data anyway.
Definitely. We have not looked at it, but a number of producers use that window to generate grazing or forage or something like that. We're just looking at it as a true cover crop where we're not taking anything on. And we have seen increases in surface or near surface level organic matter. We have indications that we've improved some of that soil structure at the surface. We've demonstrated the ability to do that, and in a way that has either no impact or even maybe a positive impact on the other crops in that rotation.
Well, given the ongoing interest in cover crops and how they might augment a cropping system for individual producers, all of this gathering of information is showing good value and helping sort out some things about what works and what doesn't. And we appreciate the update on this latest round. Kraig, many thanks to you.
Thank you, Eric. Happy to be here.
Cropping Systems agronomist Kraig Roozeboom, K-State Research and Extension. Again, in this latest attempt, they were examining the placement of cover crops in that wheat-sorghum-soybean rotation and just how far they can go with those various cover crop types and their resulting impact on crop productivity. They reported on this work at that recent Midwest Cover Crops Conference near Kansas City, co-sponsored by K-State Research and Extension. Agriculture Today will return with more on the K-State Radio Network.
With the shortage of primary care physicians, especially in rural areas, health education and disease prevention are vital. K-State Research and Extension programs address quality of life, personal development, and health behaviors across all life stages of all social-economic groups. To learn more about health education, one of K-State Research and Extension's 5 grand challenges, visit www.ksre.ksu.edu.
We're back now on this Agriculture Today. Once more, we've set up this weekly series to let you producers know about the latest out of your Farm Service Agency state office for Kansas. We're calling it FSA Coffee Talk. And we've brought by, this time around, an agricultural program specialist with the state headquarters of the Farm Service Agency, Emily Evans. Emily works, of course, directly with the Farm Bill-oriented programs that you producers rely upon. And she's here to brief us on several important deadlines coming up. So, Emily, thanks for joining us, first of all.
It's great to be here with you today and address your listeners regarding updates to important farm programs and program safety nets designed to help our farmers maintain stability for the future. A couple of those programs I want to initially address is the 2019 ARC PLC sign-up.
And why that's first and foremost today, the deadline for enrolling is coming up rather imminently. It's not just around the corner, but it's soon, correct?
Correct, yes. Producers need to be aware that there are actually 2 phases to the sign-up. There is election, where all the producers with an interest in the base acres on the farm have to make a unanimous decision on whether they want to select ARC County, ARC Individual, or PLC on each individual covered commodity base on their farms. The deadline is coming up for completing this. We need all signatures returned by March 16th. If producers fail to meet this deadline, they're going to receive a default election based on the farm's 2018 program year election, and they're not going to be eligible for payments for the 2019 program year. And just a reminder that elections are on an annual basis under the 2018 Farm Bill, except for this initial election year, which is for 2 years. It's not like the past Farm Bill where you had to make an election and you were stuck with it for the entire 5-year Farm Bill. Then there is the enrollment side, where individual covered commodity base identifying the producers who share in the crop and their percent of share. This also has a March 16th deadline for completion for the 2019 program year. Producers, if they have not already done so, need to be contacting their local FSA office to address these all-important deadlines regarding the ARC PLC program.
All right, and we're stressing this again today, Emily, because as the numbers have it, more than a few producers out there have yet to take care of this business.
Currently, for the state, we are only approximately 50% complete. Some counties are as high as 90% done, while others are as low as 30%. So we have a lot of work to do in a short time.
So again, those who have not squared this away yet need to be getting in touch with their local FSA offices. Schedule that appointment as soon as possible, for we're seriously talking about only 2.5 weeks until that deadline.
Yes, absolutely.
And there's this added opportunity for producers to update their program yields for participation purposes, Emily.
Owners of a farm can certify actual production from 2013 to 2017 harvested yield productions to update their farm PLC yield. Producers are encouraged to use RMA or crop insurance APH records to make the certification, and Kansas is fortunate because of our high percentage of farmers that do carry crop insurance coverage. Landowners have until September 2020 to make this certification for the 2020 program year.
Remember, you have that latitude in working with those yields, updating those yields if you're so inclined. So think about that as part of this overall business. There are other deadlines that you wanted to share as well beyond the ARC and PLC decisions, though, Emily.
Yes. So first, let's talk about the NAP, or Non-insured Assistance Program. For your non-insured crops, such as fruit and vegetables, spring planted, there is a March 16th deadline to apply for coverage protection. NAP actually has 2 tiers of protection. The basic coverage, which does not have a premium, only a service fee that has to be paid, and it provides 50-55 coverage, meaning 50% of the production loss and 55% price loss protection. Or producers can elect buy-up coverage, which has production coverage from 50% loss up to 65% and comes with a 100% price coverage, but it also has a premium attached, hence buy-up would indicate. Which leads me into sharing briefly new this year under the NAP program is coverage for industrial hemp.
Yeah, that has been one of the more interest-generating things of late, and that is industrial hemp producers asking all sorts of questions. As you say, though, there is an opportunity for protection of such a crop if one is growing it, right?
That's right. So while Kansas is a pilot state for crop insurance coverage for hemp, NAP coverage also is available. NAP will mirror crop insurance as far as county expected yield and price coverage. A producer can elect either program or both. However, they can only receive loss benefits from one of the programs. Hemp has 3 different intended uses. You can get seed or grain, fiber, and oil or CBD. To be covered under the NAP program, producers must have a license to grow hemp through the Kansas Department of Revenue, and they must also provide and have a contract from a bona fide processing plant agreeing to purchase their product. Hemp is a spring-planted crop, so producers have until March 16th to elect coverage protection if desired under multi-peril crop insurance or through FSA and NAP coverage. Producers can contact their local FSA offices for additional information as it becomes available.
So if you are thinking about tinkering with hemp or making a commitment and you've gone through the process, gaining approval for producing industrial hemp this year, you can look into that coverage. And before we leave the subject of NAP, it'll also, NAP, cover such things as hay, alfalfa, those non-insured crops, as the name would imply. Right?
That is correct.
And you say you have one more item you'd like to alert producers about. And it really ties into just about all USDA program participation. That is, if a producer hasn't been into their FSA counter to update their operational details, to put it that way, they need to do so as soon as possible.
I would just like to remind all producers, as changes occur on your farming operations and farm entities regarding members sharing in the production of crops, we need you to report those changes as they occur to your local FSA office. By timely reporting changes to FSA, we will be better equipped to serve you and eliminate delays in program benefits as additional safety net programs become available to you.
So that's a good reminder for year-round, frankly. Keep your FSA fully in the know on whatever changes you've made in your operation for these various purposes. Emily, we appreciate the word. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you for having me.
That's the latest on agricultural programs from the Farm Service Agency and key deadlines for you producers to be aware of and meeting very soon now. From the FSA State Headquarters, Agricultural Program Specialist Emily Evans on this, the latest FSA Coffee Talk. Now, some follow-up information here. Agricultural economists here at K-State have been hard at work putting together information to aid you producers in making that selection between ARC and PLC for the 2019-20 and 2021 marketing years. And they have just put the finishing touches on and have posted their ARC County payment estimates for 19 and 20 corn, soybeans, grain, sorghum, and wheat. These are based on 2019-20 estimated marketing year average prices. And, in fact, you can access an interactive map of Kansas and every other state, for that matter, and the ARC County estimates. All of this is at agmanager.info. A couple of footnotes to this. The 2018 Farm Bill changed the source for the FSA county level yield data from the National Agricultural Statistics Service published county yields to those of the Risk Management Agency. The FSA is using those RMA county yields to set the benchmark county yields and then determine the actual 19 and 20 county yields to be used in the calculation of the ARC County payments. The two individuals who put together these estimates, K-State's Robin Reed and Art Barnaby, note that they're not sure when the 2019 RMA yields will actually be released. In the meantime, they used NAST yields to estimate the county yields for these ARC County projections. So that information is out there for you producers as you go about finalizing your decision on ARC or PLC for 2019 and 2020 crop production. That is handy at agmanager.info, and we will have Robin Reed and Art Barnaby Mike's side later on this week to talk more about these estimates and how to make use of them. Before the break, to remind of yet another USDA program deadline, and this one is just right around the corner this Friday, February the 28th. That is the final day to apply for participation in the latest Conservation Reserve Program general enrollment. The FSA will be ranking offers submitted by you landowners for this CRP general enrollment period. According to the Environmental Benefits Index, the FSA will be assigning each offer a score based on that offer's relative environmental factors, representing categories such as wildlife habitat, water quality, erosion reduction, air quality benefits, cost, and so forth. Of course, your local FSA has all the specifics on the program details, but to remind, this Friday, February the 28th, is the final day to apply for this latest Conservation Reserve Program general enrollment. You are tuned in to Agriculture Today. Now we'll break away when we come back. Today's agricultural news headlines for you. Also, K-State's Mike Brook awaits with this week's edition of Milk Lines. And we'll have a go at another wildlife management topic with K-State's Charlie Lee further ahead. Keep it right here, won't you, on this, the K-State Radio Network.
Did you know every Kansas farmer feeds 128 plus people?
Kansas farmers are hard workers, dependable, authentic, and sensitive.
Not only do farmers put food on your table, but they put clothes on your back and fuel in your car.
For more information about Kansas farmers, visit K-State Research and Extension online or stop by your local extension office. This message has been brought to you by the K-State Animal Sciences Leadership Academy participants.
You're tuned in to the K-State Radio Network and Agriculture Today. Eric Atkinson with you. Welcome back. Now it's on to today's agricultural news headlines briefly for you. Courtesy in part of DTN, the USDA's National Agricultural Statistics Service, posting its monthly crop progress and condition report. And they tell us that topsoil moisture in Kansas is now rated at 17% surplus, 61% adequate, and 22% short to very short, while subsoil moisture is at 12% surplus and 64% adequate, 24% short to very short there. As far as the state of the winter wheat crop in Kansas, rated at 35% good to excellent now, 45% fair, and 20% poor to very poor. The weekly USDA crop condition reports will resume next week for the 2020 season. China has conditionally lifted its ban on imports of U.S. beef and beef products from animals more than 30 months of age. That according to a notice from the Chinese General Administration of Customs Office. The notice said that inspection and quarantine requirements would be released separately. This action, one of the moves that China agreed to as part of the Phase 1 agreement with the U.S. The other one on beef is that China is set to maximum residue levels for 3 growth hormones used in U.S. beef production. That's an action that China agreed to take within 30 days of the agreement taking force. That would be March the 14th. The age limit action announced by China also on the same timeline as the MRL issue, so China is ahead of their deadline on that front. Right now, the biggest issue with creating so-called meat products from cells is not so much the process itself, but what to officially call those products. Here's a closer look from the USDA's Gary Crawford.
Growing so-called meat products from cells like cultures is a new technology, exciting for some, threatening for others. But as companies work on the process...
The primary focus of interest right now in the cell culture world seems to be product labeling.
Oh, yes, putting Matthew Michael with the USDA's Food Safety and Inspection Service right in the middle of it. His group will play a big part in deciding what to call these new products, and there are scores of names that have been suggested. Some of them we can't say on the radio. Michael told USDA's Outlook Forum...
Just from these names, these proposed names from the public and the industry and consumer advocacy groups, you can see that there are a lot of differing opinions about this product, and there's a lot of interest in this product, and it's something.
It's something, all right. 5 of the companies working on these products have formed an alliance to work with government on what to call these products. And Penn State University sociologist Dr. Rob Childs says obviously...
There's a lot at stake with that, and I think that all the different stakeholders recognize this.
In Washington, Gary Crawford for the U.S. Department of Agriculture.
And Environmental Protection Agency data now shows that agency now has 23 small refinery exemption requests for the 2019 compliance year. That's an increase from 2 compared with month-ago data. Attention continues on the issue, with reports indicating that the EPA will respond to that court decision sometime in early March on this topic. Indications are the court ruling has the potential to impact many previously granted SREs, in that the court determined that for 3 of those granted for the 2016 compliance year, the agency did not act appropriately, as the court said the exemptions were to be extensions of ones granted prior to 2010. Next up on Agriculture Today, the weekly feature for you dairy producers, Milk Lines, with K-State dairy specialist Mike Brook. Mike?
Today I'd like to visit with our Kansas dairy farmers concerning some issues that we continue to see with milking equipment on many of our dairy farms. Many of our farms are running that equipment 22, maybe 23 hours a day. So a lot of cows see that equipment every day, and on most of our farms they're seeing it 2 or 3 times. So the maintenance of the equipment becomes a critical control factor on our farms. One of the most common pieces of equipment to fail in the milking system is actually the pulsator. That's the little unit that allows either air pressure or vacuum into that space between the inflation and the liner so that we get milking action. Why do they fail? Well, most commonly they actually fail because a pulsator hose slips off, picks up some manure off the deck or other pieces of straw or whatever might happen to be there. That gets sucked into the pulsator, and then the pulsator will eventually fail. Dirt is also a major issue as well. So how do we prevent that? Well, some have installed filters in those lines, and that does help prevent things from getting to the pulsator, but we also then have to keep an eye on the filters to make sure if they're clogged that they get changed. Otherwise, that will impede the flow of vacuum and atmospheric air pressure as it alternates. Many of you have these graphed out on a regular basis. Question is, when you have the service technicians come in and they do the normal maintenance and they graph all the pulsators, how many are failed on a given check? When you start to see multiple pulsators failing every time the technicians show up, that means that they've not been working properly for some time. Probably means that you need to have the technicians come in more often. In other words, scheduled maintenance needs to increase so that we can catch the pulsators before they become a hazard to the cow. As we watch the cow's milk, we need to train our milkers to look for failed pulsators. It's actually a fairly easy thing to do. Number one, pulsators that have failed probably are not going to milk the cow correctly. Cows are going to be uncomfortable. Many times that unit will get kicked off before the milking is actually completed because of the discomfort it causes to the cow. One quick check that any milker can do is to just simply stick their fingers into the inflations with the vacuum on to feel if there's milking action. If there's not milking action, then that means there's an issue with the pulsator and needs to be replaced now, not later. So they need to notify the people on the farm that are responsible for doing that immediately. The second major issue that we usually find in systems is just maintenance of vacuum at the teat end. Today, with all of our electronic controls and variable speed vacuum pumps, this is a fairly complicated system, and sometimes we fail to check this on a regular basis. And when these things fail, that means that many times we get too high a vacuum level in the line, which again can cause discomfort to the animal during the milking process. So careful monitoring of these systems and regular checks to make sure that controls are working correctly are very important. This is Mike Brook with K-State Research and Extension, encouraging our dairy farmers to work with their local equipment service crews to make sure that we do a good job of maintaining pulsators and vacuum level at the teat end.
All right, Mike, thanks for the useful input, as always. K-State's Charlie Lee awaits for his weekly visit. That's next on Agriculture Today.
When you are in need of timely, reliable, and trusted information, K-State Research and Extension is here. Whether it's organizing people, information, or resources, they have the necessary tools. Community comes first for K-State Research and Extension. For more information and to connect with your county's extension agents, visit www.ksre.k-state.edu.
Agriculture Today is back now. And once again with us is Charlie Lee, Wildlife Specialist, K-State Research and Extension. Well, the purple martins, Charlie, are to arrive back in Kansas soon. This migratory bird is extremely popular with folks out there.
Yes, the purple martin is North America's largest swallow, an aerial insectivore. They're very much appreciated by many folks. In fact, there's evidence that Native Americans were supplying artificial housing to entice purple martins to nest close to Native American communities as many as 10,000 years ago. The eastern purple martin, unfortunately, though, has, like many species of birds, has been going on a decline. It's not as precipitous as some other species, but probably in the last 60 to 70 years has resulted in almost a 60% reduction.
And what's at the cause of that, since you bring it up?
Well, the cause is primarily competition. And that competition started back when the first house sparrows and starlings, which are exotic species, were introduced to North America. They just simply are more aggressive nesters. The purple martin historically was a cavity nester in tree cavities and openings in rock faces or rock piles, and starlings and house sparrows just outcompete them. But there's been some change. A good research effort had been done just recently and published that looked at the long-term nest data from 73,000 nest records taken from eastern purple martin populations. And that population would be from the Rocky Mountains, basically northward into Canada to the Gulf and to the East Coast. That data set showed that when proper housing is provided, purple martins can do quite well.
Artificial housing now.
Artificial housing, yes. This would be gourds or housing specifically constructed to attract purple martins. It showed the nest survival a little bit greater than 80%. So with that kind of nest survival, purple martins have an opportunity to be very productive, and perhaps by increasing the number of those artificial housing structures that are put up, we can reverse this decline. They're certainly a very popular bird. There is associations and groups. Their focus is dealing with purple martins. There's certainly a lot of information out there to help people. And I thought maybe it would be important to go over some of the main reasons that people fail to either attract or keep purple martins in the area.
Well, what are the basics in as far as purple martin housing structure? What's absolutely required here?
Well, the first thing and the reason that most people fail to attract martins is that the martin housing is not placed correctly. Their site is inappropriate martin habitat to begin with. They have very specific aerial space requirements. They need to have an open area, not too close to tall trees or other buildings, and they need to have an open area out in front. If the trees are taller than the martin housing, then it's very unlikely you're going to get martins to utilize it unless you have some distance, at least 40 feet, preferably 60 feet away from these taller trees. In the southern half of the purple martin breeding range, and the southern part of Kansas would be within that range, purple martins aren't quite as specific. You can get by with maybe a less specific location and still get purple martins to utilize it. The further north you go, the more exact the location seems to be. Specifically in regards to the housing, those manufactured housing units or gourds should be painted white or a light pastel color. The trim doesn't seem to make any difference, but white housing seems to attract the martins the best. That white housing, it reflects the heat of the sun, it keeps the nestlings a little cooler, and thus enhances surviving as well.
But how does one keep other species, other birds, from taking over that purple martin housing? And that has a lot to do with the design, you say.
Yeah, a lot of that is with the design, and specifically with the opening into the manufactured housing. There are several different designs out there of shapes on how to develop a starling-proof opening into a martin house. Typically, it just needs to be the right shape and size. A hair too large and starlings can enter. A hair too small, purple martins would not be able to enter the manufactured housing. The next issue is, since these are birds that like to flock in close proximity to each other, you need to have more than one gourd hanging in an area. Preferably have 4 to 6 or more openings into your manufactured housing, that many separate compartments. Again, that's a better technique to attract purple martins. The next thing to think about after you've figured out the right location, you've purchased a pre-built martin house, or you've constructed one according to good plans, is how do you keep predators out of the house? Predation is the most common reasons that martins abandon a colony site, and it's when those predators raid their nest. Predators can be a wide range of species, including hawks and owls and starlings and crows and snakes and raccoons. All find young purple martins or eggs part of their diet occasionally. It just takes one predation event, and oftentimes all of the surviving birds are going to abandon that site and look for different locations. So most people are going to need to do weekly nest checks to know that their purple martin nests or eggs are disappearing, but that's something a lot of folks get a lot of enjoyment doing. It's a kind of an activity monitoring purple martin houses that seems to grow on folks, and the more they get involved in it, the more success they're going to have.
But as you say, Charlie, the time is nigh for their re-arrival here in Kansas. So if folks haven't taken the necessary preparations, they need to do so now.
Yeah, now is the time. You want to make sure that your purple martin housing is up. I wouldn't open the openings into the structure just yet. You've probably got 2 or 3 weeks before that needs to be done to find new martins nesting in new areas.
Those are good guidelines in attracting and keeping purple martins around. Charlie, thanks for the word. Charlie Lee, wildlife specialist, K-State Research and Extension. And once again, our time's away. Thanks for tuning in. Please be back with us here tomorrow. Until then, Eric Atkinson for Agriculture Today over the K-State Radio Network.